If you're a beauty business owner or an aspiring beauty business owner and you're looking for a place where you can get biblical guidance, practical business strategies, and a supportive community of like minded women, girl, you found the right place. Welcome to the Beauty Businesses for Christ podcast. I'm your host, Whitney, and I am a licensed esthetician, an aesthetics instructor, and I own my own wax studio specializing in Brazilian waxing. And this is going on my fifth year of business. So, welcome. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you found the podcast. And I'm just going to say, I really felt the Lord calling me to do this. To be honest, starting this community has been on my heart for over 2 years. And I attempted to start Beauty Businesses for Christ on TikTok last year. And the devil really got a hold of my mind, something serious. And I just felt unqualified. I felt I couldn't talk about this. I just didn't want to do it. And girl, I ended up deleting all my social media back in May. And girl, that's a whole nother podcast. Okay. That's actually the next episode of like why I quit social media. But I'm gonna tell you, like 2024 has been a really it's been a difficult year for me. But I thank God for his grace on my life. I thank him for his unfailing love. I thank him for just being there for me throughout this past year because it was definitely a struggle. I really came to a point where I didn't even want anything to do with the beauty industry, to be honest. And that's, part of the reason why I didn't even want to come on here and, create this YouTube and podcast platform. I didn't want to do this, but I truly felt the Lord pressed me to do this. I got confirmation from him to do this. So I'm like, okay, Lord, I'm going to be obedient. I love you and I'm here to serve you. So here I am. So, the purpose of Beauty Businesses for Christ is to really just empower and equip Christian women and to help them build God honoring businesses. The Lord really spoke to me and was like, women in our industry really need a place like this. And he reminded me of how I prayed to him about finding the space like this, of finding a space where I could connect with like-minded Christian women in the beauty industry and, getting some biblical guidance and just getting strategies of how to run our businesses in a God honoring way. And I couldn't really find that anywhere. And I gotten really like deep into SEO and learning SEO this past year. And I remember doing my keyword research and I'm like talking to the Lord. I'm like, Lord, I don't see anything about like beauty businesses or beauty Christian entrepreneurs. Like I'm having a hard time finding this online. Like I see a lot of stuff about Christian entrepreneurship, but nothing really in our specific industry. And I just felt the Lord tell me, he's like, yeah, because I'm calling you to create that space for them. And I'm like, oh, okay, Lord, I hear you. So here we are. Here's the first episode of the podcast. And I'm excited to see where the Lord is going to bring this. I figured the first episode will be a great episode to just share my testimony on how the Lord, called me into the beauty industry and called me into opening up my own wax studio. So, yeah, I have my iPad here. I got some notes because, girl, I feel like this might be a chatty episode. And I'm going to try to make it not as long, but the Lord is just leading me to share my story with you. He just feels like this is going to bring you some encouragement and to let you know that whatever season that you're in, He is right there with you the whole way. You're not alone in this. So, okay, where do I start? I guess I'll start back in college. That's where my interest in beauty even started. It was like my senior year of college, is when I actually started to wear makeup and I like just loved the way I looked wearing makeup. I just loved the whole process of it. So I remember my college roommate had asked me to help her out with this with this fashion show she was putting on. She has a model she wanted me to help do the makeup for. And I'm thinking, I barely know how to do my makeup. You want me to do other people's makeup? I was like, are you sure? And she's like, yeah, I want you to help me out. So I help her out. I don't want to leave her hanging. And so I end up doing these girls' makeup and it didn't come out half bad. It was actually halfway decent looking. I was like, oh, okay. And then I actually had like so much fun doing their makeup. But I will say, my college years, girl, I was a straight up heathen. Okay. I was just a straight up sinner. I had no parts of wanting to know who God was. Like I knew who he was, but I had no relationship with God. I said I was a Christian, but I knew I was not living no Christian lifestyle. And like once I got to college, it's like I literally wowed out because I really felt like growing up in my childhood, I was very sheltered. So once I got to college, I just felt like I was grown and I could do whatever I want. And I definitely reaped the consequences of that because my grades were terrible. I was not passing classes. I don't know if you ever heard this term, but like when you're in college and you end up doing a fifth year, you call it your super senior year. So I end up going to school for 5 years and then dropping out. So I spent all that time in college just to not finish. And at first I was like, don't want to share that part of my story, but I felt the Lord telling me like, yeah, share that because people need to hear that. And that's something I've been holding on to, but it's something I really didn't talk about because I had a lot of shame and guilt tied towards not finishing college. But I remember talking to the Lord about it. He was like, that's part of your journey. That's part of the purpose. That's part of you. Don't be ashamed of that. I'm not holding that against you. And don't let the devil hold that lie that you are worthless, that you're nothing because you didn't finish college. That's part of your story. So share that. And here I am sharing that. So if that's you, girl, if you didn't finish college, it's okay. God still loves you. He still has a beautiful purpose and plan for your life. We can't hold certain failures against ourselves because God is not holding that against us. We have to forgive ourselves. We have to let go of that. And the enemy is really good at making us feel ashamed of things that God has already forgiven us for. So I just wanted to add that in. So yeah, I didn't finish college, end up moving back home with my parents, and I get a job at a makeup counter. It was Lancome. That was my first makeup job, and I was so excited. And that really like sparked the interest of my makeup artistry career. So from after I worked at Lancome, I actually got recruited to work at a Sephora and J.C. Penney, and moved up there. Ended up getting an assistant management job at that company, and then I got recruited to work for Ulta as an assistant manager. And when I got that job, I hated that job. I'm not even gonna lie. Like I was under the impression that I was still gonna be able to do makeup working at Ulta, and I definitely was not. I was doing a lot of like stock and merchandising. I was in the back room a lot, and I was responsible for coming in morning or night to open or close the store. It was a lot of responsibility for me because at that time, I think I was 26 at that time, 25, 26 when I had that position. And it was just something I didn't want to do. I was like, I want to do makeup. I don't want to be in the back stalking stuff and putting stuff away. I want to be out there beating some faces. Like, so I was at that job for maybe less than a year and I end up applying for Mac. So I get hired at Mac and girl, Mac will put you through it for interviews. Like, I think I went through like four different interviews before I got the job. And I thought I wasn't going to get the job. But I get the job. And girl, when I got that Mac position, you could not tell me nothing. Like, I just thought I was that girl. I just thought I hit the jackpot. I'm like, yes, I'm that girl. I had a huge sense of pride about myself, and I just felt like I was better than other people because I had this Mac girl position. Girl, I was a mess back then, okay? So I worked for Mac for several years and ended up getting into freelance makeup artistry where I would go and do weddings and proms and events, stuff like that. It was like towards the end of my Mac career, I was looking for something more. I wanted more to do within makeup. I was like, there's got to be something else. I was like, maybe there's like a license or something I could get that includes doing makeup. So yeah, I'm doing my research on Google and I come up, cosmetology pops up. And I'm like, reading through cosmetology, I was like, oh yeah, hairstylist, nails. I don't like any of that. I don't have the patience to do hair. I don't want to do nails. I'm not interested in that. So I keep researching and then the word esthetician pops up. And girl, I couldn't even pronounce that word. I was like, Esther, what? Who? And so I'm like doing all this research on esthetician. I'm like, oh, okay. So they do facials, they do waxing. I'm not about waxing. I don't know about that. But facials, that sounds cool. I can really add that on to like, with my makeup clients. That's perfect. So I ended up doing more research on schools that were near me. So the prices at aesthetic school was pretty expensive for me. Like I couldn't afford it just paying out of pocket. I think it cost like $7,000 at the time. And so I had to find a school that accepted financial aid and grants. So fortunately, I found a school that accepted all that, and I get into the school, do the program, and we get towards the end of the program when it's time to go take state boards. And I find out I still have a balance on my account, and the admission manager was like, I couldn't go forward with state board testing until I paid off my balance, and the balance was like $3,000, something like that. And I was like, well, I don't have that money. So I ended up just putting that on the back burner. I was like, well, I guess I won't finish this out. So at this time, I was working at a spa part time while I was going to school, and I was still doing makeup, freelance makeup on the weekends. So I just did that. I just focused on my makeup career again and just kind of forgot about aesthetics. So, and this was in 2016. So now we're in 2017. I meet this man, and literally my life goes completely downhill, girl. I literally felt like this man was sent from Satan himself. Okay. He literally, it was a huge distraction in my life. And it really just led me down a dark path. Like at this point, I definitely was not thinking about aesthetics. And girl, I feel like I met my husband because, all the men I had dealt with in my past, I felt like I always was the one like taking care of them, paying for stuff. And then this man comes into my life and he's paying for everything. He's taking care of everything. He's taking care of bills. And I was like, oh yes, this is my husband. This is it. And so I was just feeling like I was living it up in my life. And but I will say this relationship was so toxic. It was very toxic. We argued all the time. It was just over little things too, and it just got so bad. And I knew God had his hand in this because this man ended up taking a job all the way on the other side of the country. Okay. So we end up like kind of dating long distance, but not, and end up breaking up. And girl, I was so heartbroken. This was like one of the most deepest heartbreaks I've experienced. And it wasn't because of the loss of the relationship. God revealed to me it was because of the loss of my mom. So this was year 2017, right? My mom had passed away in 2013. And when I was in this broken place of this broken relationship, the Lord revealed to me that I was still grieving my mom. I didn't fully grieve my mom. And I just remember being so broken and not knowing God at all, but desiring to know him, desiring to want him in my life. And I thank God for putting such an amazing mother in my life because she was such a woman of faith. She had faith in some of the most craziest of situations, but she always believed. She always talked about God to me and my siblings. And I'm gonna be honest, when she would talk to us about God, I thought she was crazy. I'm like, that makes no sense. I'm like, how are you believing and trusting? And it makes no sense. Like, okay. And my grandmother was a minister, and she would talk to us about God. She had us go to her church. So I grew up in church. I grew up going to church. I grew up um, knowing about this God, but I didn't have a relationship with this God because I was so deep into the world, right? And I just remember the things my mom taught me, and I just truly felt the Lord had her plant these seeds in my heart because those seeds started to bloom and it started to really blossom in my mind. And I'm like, who is this God that my mom would pray to? Who is this God that when I would go downstairs, I would see her worshiping him? Who is this God? I want to know who this is. I want to have a faith like my mom had. I want to believe in this God that my mom believed so hard in. And I just remember surrendering to the Lord at this point in 2017 and just giving my life to him and just wanting more from my life. Because at this point in my life, I was just so deep in despair. I was like going to alcohol to soothe this pain and fill this void that only the Lord could fill. I was heavy into smoking weed. I was taking edibles. Girl, I was a mess. Okay? I was a mess. And I truly just wanted this pain that was in me, this bitterness. I had a lot of bitterness in my heart. I had a lot of meanness in my heart. I had a lot of sadness in my heart and just a lot of I was I was dead pretty much. I was living in death. And I was like, I'm tired, Lord. I am tired of feeling like this. I'm so tired of feeling like this. There's got to be more to life than feeling like this. And that's when I started really discovering who God is, right? So I give myself to the Lord. I find a church home, and I feel the Lord nudging me to go back to aesthetic school and finish what I started. He was like, Whitney, you didn't finish college. That's okay. But I'm calling you. Not even calling you, like I'm telling you, you have to go back to aesthetic school and you have to finish what you started. And I remember praying to the Lord and talking to him. I was like, well, Lord, I don't even have the money to pay them off. How am I going to finish this? And I just remember that Bible verse where it says in Proverbs 3, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge him and he will direct your paths. I remember that Bible verse. That's one of the Bible verses that really it keeps me going a lot of days. So I was like, okay, Lord, I'm going to trust you. So literally, I started getting booked up every single weekend with weddings and events for makeup, and within a month or two I had enough money saved up to pay off my school. So I contact my school and I told them, I have the money to pay, and I want to take the state boards. So they told me to come in and do some state board training classes. I do that, and girl, this is what into 2017, we're going into 2018. So I spent all of the beginning of 2018 just really locked up in my room studying for the state boards, preparing for the state boards, and I go and take the test in April and I end up passing. And the moment I passed, I literally had to give God all the praises and the glory because only He could take the credit for that. I know He had a hand in that because at this point I had been out of school for 2 years, and I was like, you don't really hear somebody being out of school for that long and going back to take a test and then passing. I was like, that is God. He literally put it in me. He put the strength in me to study. He put the strength in me to go to these classes. He put the knowledge in me to pass these tests. And I had to just give him all the glory and the praise for that. I was literally mind blown. I was just like, wow, wow. So at this point, I'm now a licensed esthetician, and now I'm still working at the spa. But I was like, the spa didn't have any positions, esthetician positions open, so I had to find a job in my industry now. Like, I'm like, I'm tired of working front desk at the spa. Like, I want something more. Now I'm licensed, right? So I end up looking for jobs, and there was one job I really wanted and I didn't get. The lady was like, I wasn't experienced enough. I was coming into that problem a lot. It was like they were looking for experience. I'm like, well, goodness, like, are you going to give any new esthetician a chance? So, but there was this one particular job that kept popping up on my search that I did not want, but it kept popping up on my search. And this job was to be a dermalogica esthetician at the Ulta that I used to manage at, girl. Yes. And I'm like, God, are you telling me to apply for this job? Because I'm like, I feel like I'm going backwards. I don't want to go back into the retail space. I left retail. I'm done with retail. You telling me I got to go back here? And he was like, yes, apply for this job. This job is yours. And I was like, I don't want this job. Like, I was wrestling with God with that. I did not want to go back into that space. And thank God I did leave Ulta on good terms because my manager that I worked with was actually still working there. She was transitioning to going into another store, and she gave me just high praises and recommended me to the salon manager that I was going to work under, and I ended up getting the job. But there was a little issue. So I was licensed in Virginia and the job was in Maryland. And so I had to wait for my Virginia license to come in. so that I could then submit that into Maryland to get my Maryland license. And of course, Virginia took so long for my license to come in. I think it took like literally over a month before I got my Virginia license in. But by the grace of God, that's my salon manager. She was so sweet. I loved her. She held the position for me. She's like, okay, as soon as you get your Maryland license, this job is yours. We'll hold it for you. And I'm like, when God has favor over your life, like can't nothing, no one, no devil, no nothing take that away from you. When God's hand is on something, it's a done deal. It's a done deal. And from there, I get the job, and I learned a lot there. I learned how to do different type of facials. I learned how to set up my own appointments because I mean I already had that skill because I did front desk at the spa, so I already knew how to book appointments, manage appointments. I already knew how to do that, but I built that skill even more in the dermatological position because I was the only esthetician working there. So I was in charge of my schedule. I was in charge of the people booking people. I was able to make my own schedule. I made my own hours, and it really taught me a lot of responsibility. It was kind of like a stepping stone for me being a solo esthetician. I'm telling you, when you let God be in control of your life, he maps things out so perfectly. Things just go so smoothly. It's like so crazy on how smoothly things go when God's hand is on it and when you're obedient to what he's telling you to do because it's just like wow, it just the way things went in my career when I was surrendered to the Lord and was obedient to Him, it just went so smoothly in my life. I was just like, wow. So I'm at Ulta working as an esthetician still. This is towards the end of 2018, and I'm feeling like being led to do something else. And waxing pops up in my mind. I remember this one girl I was working with at Ulta, she had got a job at European Wax Center and she was just telling me about how much money she was making there. She's like, yes, waxing is it, girl. It's better than facials. You should definitely apply here. And I was like, huh, waxing. I don't know about that because when I was in school, girl, I really sucked at waxing when I was at school. I was not good at it. I was like terrible. Okay. It was just not good. So waxing was never on my radar when I became an esthetician. It was always about facials. But I was like, it was just something in me, which I knew it was the Lord that was pressing me to look into waxing. And so I did. And he told me not to apply for the European Wax Center that was actually next door to the Ulta. He was like, you're not working there. This is where you're working. And it was a company called Wax in the City. And I remember doing research on the company that I wanted to work at, and it seemed pretty cool. I was like, okay, this seems legit. And so I applied for the job. I had to go through all these interviews there as well because this particular company, they were very like close knit and I could tell they were really careful on who they wanted to hire. And so I told them I had no experience in waxing, and I was honest with them. I was like, because they did male Brazilian waxing, and I told them I was like, I'm not comfortable with that. I don't think that's something I want to do. I was like, is that a requirement to get this job? And they're like, oh no, that's only if you want to do it. They didn't like press you to do it. So I was like, okay, cool. So I ended up getting the job, and I will say my experience working for this company was amazing. I know some women have not the best experiences working at these wax chains, but I was fortunate where I had a great owner and a manager because the owner, she actually worked in the studio. She was an esthetician herself, so she really understood. And then at this time, I don't know if Waxing City still does this, but they sent you out to get trained at their training center in Minnesota. And so I was sent out to do that. And every day you are trained on a different body part. So they were like really getting you prepared to wax, wax their way, of course, their method of waxing. But they really are preparing you to like know how to do this. And then when you come back to your home studio, you're doing more training. And so I was like, I really felt like I was super prepared and I learned a lot working under them. For me, it was a great experience and it led me to where I am now, right? So now we're in 2020 and we know 2020 COVID hits. So when COVID hits, of course, our company, our business is shut down for like 3 months. We're not working. And in this time, I feel the Lord telling me to open my own business. And I'm like, what? God, it's COVID. Like, how am I going to do that? Like, but it was just something in me he put in me, and I started researching how to open my own, solo aesthetics business. I started doing research and looking at different girls' videos on YouTube and on Instagram on other women who've done it. I'm like, okay, I think I can do this. And I just remember one of the girls I used to work with, she ended up going solo, and I was just so inspired by that. I was like, wow, I want to do that. I didn't see myself doing that until like 2 to 3 years later from where I was in 2020, not in 2020, but I felt the Lord like press me to do this. So I do it. I research how to like open my own business, research on what an LLC is, getting my business name together, all that stuff. And I end up I do it. And I just remember it was a Saturday. I wrote my 2 weeks notice and put it on my manager's desk. And I was so scared after I did it. I wanted to go back and get that letter and be like, oh no, never mind. I'm gonna actually stay. But I felt the Lord was like, leave that letter there. It's time for you to go. And so this is when was this? This was July of 2020. And so I ended up going fully solo on my own in August of 2020. And I was sharing a space with one of my girlfriends. She's a hairstylist and makeup artist, and she was so gracious enough to let me rent her studio um, for like 3 days out the week. And I'm so appreciative of her allowing me to do that. But I knew once I went fully solo, I was gonna have to get my own space. I needed a bigger space, and I needed my own hours because it was kind of hard working off her hours too. So in October, I end up getting my own studio space, and I work in a like a office type of space. The space I was sharing with my girlfriend, she was in one of those salon suites, and I knew that didn't work out for what I was looking for. So I knew I had to move on. So here's another testimony on just how God had a hand on my life when I was looking for this studio space. The Lord led me to look on Craigslist, girl. And who is still using Craigslist in 2020? Okay, like who is still using it? And so I just remember him telling me to look on Craigslist, and that's how I found my studio space. And I remember telling my boyfriend, who's my husband now, I was like, come check out this place with me. Let's see how this looks. Let's make sure this is legit because I'm like, are people really still looking for stuff on Craigslist? Because I remember Craigslist was like big back in like, early 2000s and stuff. Like everybody was posting and looking for things on Craigslist, but 2020 people are still using it. But it was legit. We go to the place, and the landlord, my landlord, she was super sweet, and I had to tell her my situation. I was like, I still am renting out a space with my girlfriend, and I did tell her that, when I was ready to look for my own place, I had to give her like a proper amount of days of notice, and the landlord understood that. And she's like, okay, I'll hold this space for you. And you can start here in October. And this was the beginning of September. So she held that spot for me when she could have gave it to somebody else because I knew she was looking for somebody to rent it. But she held it for October for me. And I had to, in order to get this space, I had to pay first month's rent, last month's rent, and a security deposit. And girl, I only had 1/3 of that money. And I'm like, okay, I have to come up with this money, the rest of this money, um, in a month. And I'm just like, how in the world am I going to do this? I literally only have like 4 or 5 consistent clients at this time. I'm still building my business. And the Lord was like, don't be prideful and ask for help. So he led me to ask my dad and my boyfriend, who's my husband now, for the remaining money. And at first I didn't want to do it because I wanted to do it on my own. And that was a pride thing. I wanted to feel like I did this on my own, knowing that it wasn't me who did this. This was all God, right? But I humbled myself and I was like, okay, God, I'm going to not be prideful and I'm going to ask for help. And I asked them for help and they both gladly gave me the rest of the money that I needed to get this space. So, yeah, girl, I've been in that space ever since. And, man, God is amazing. He is truly amazing when I just look back on my journey. Now, it has not been easy for me growing the business. Like I want to say my first 2 years of business, I was really grinding it out, like getting clients, really just posting a lot on social media. I was really active on social media, like trying to get my business built. And I ended up signing for mentorship programs and business programs for strategies on how to get clients. And they did work, but the thing is, their strategies for getting clientele was very worldly. It was not God honoring. When I first opened my business, I did it because I wanted freedom in my schedule. I wanted freedom in my finances. I also wanted to create generational wealth. I really didn't desire like making six, seven figures until I got into these programs. That making six figure, seven figure mindset really took a hold of my mind, something serious. It became about making money. And it wasn't until the end of, I would say the end of 2022 into 2023, the Lord really was showing me how how I was running my business, and it wasn't in a way that was honoring Him. It was not. And I knew I had to make some changes in how I was doing things in my business. And so at this point, I reduced my schedule and I just started focusing more on the Lord. I got more closer to God because God also revealed to me that I wasn't a true Christian the way I thought I was. I was living a lukewarm lifestyle. I was doing things in the way of the world. I wasn't doing things that pleased or honored Him. And I had to repent of that. And I just spent all of 2023 into 2024 really just getting to know the Lord and just really focusing on who God is, who Jesus is, and doing things that is pleasing to Him. So, with that, it was challenging when it came to marketing my business because, like I said, the beauty industry is very worldly. It was very worldly, but I knew I couldn't market the way that others were doing it, and I had to do it God's way. And God is faithful. He sent me clients that I knew were meant for me. He was like, as long as you honor me, as long as you trust me, the clients will come, and it's going to be the right clients. He reminded me, he was like, you don't want every single person as your client. There's going to be clients that I made specifically for your business. And I trusted him in that. But girl, it's been a journey. I'm going to say 2024 was definitely a year of a lot of revelation for my business. A year where I'm truly focusing on making sure my business is honoring God first and foremost. Because we have to remember God is the creator of business. And business is good. It's a good thing because God created it. And He wants us to use our businesses to give Him the glory and to honor Him, but to also serve others. It's about other people. It's not about us. As beauty business owners, we are servers. We are called to serve. We are servants to our clients, right? And so we have to remember that, it's not about making six and seven figures. It's not about that. It's about, are we loving others well? Are we serving others well? Are we doing that? God's called us to serve. Are we serving well? And it says that in Romans 12:7. It says, if your gift is serving, serve well. We can have amazing businesses done God's way. We don't have to go the way of the world. Don't think that you have to do what the people of the world are doing. We are set apart. We are Christ followers. We are called to build for His kingdom. Girl, we have to remember that. We are called to build for His kingdom. We are called to be the light of this world. Our light that is shining is going to encourage others and uplift others, and we're called to do that. And in this dark industry, we are called to be the light. And that's why this podcast, this YouTube channel is here so that it can be a light in this industry. So, girl, I hope this testimony brought you some encouragement. Know that the Lord, He is a miracle working God. He's done some miracles, okay, up in my life that I know it was only the Lord who had a hand in it. Because as I'm reminded, I can't do this life without Him. I literally can't. I depend on Him for everything, everything. And I just want to make it a point that this ministry that God has led me to start and to lead, I'm not here to teach you how to make 6 and 7 figures, girl. I'm just here to equip you with biblical guidance and business strategies that is all going to produce a God honoring business for the Lord. That's what it's about, and about building a community of women where we can build this together and keeping God the center of it all. So, yeah, like I mentioned, I'm not on social media anymore. So, my next episode, I'm going to talk about why I quit social media as a Christian entrepreneur and how my business has been going since I quit social media. Is it doing good? Is it doing bad? I'm going to tell you all the things, girl, in the next episode. But I encourage you to share this podcast with a sister in Christ who is in the beauty industry, even if it's a woman who's just a woman entrepreneur who's looking to be in a community of like-minded women who wants to build a God-honoring business. Send this podcast to her. And if this brought you some encouragement, drop me a comment, drop me a like, subscribe, join the community. I would love to have you. And we'll chat later, girl. Bye.